All right, moving on to some news about U.S. and China. First of all, this is absolutely ridiculous. The U.S. carried out another shot trial for its General R. Ford aircraft carrier. This is our new class of aircraft carrier. It's one of the newest aircraft carriers. And what the U.S. has done now is conducted a series of 3 tests, getting closer and closer with bigger and bigger bombs to the Ford. And this time they set off an explosion with 40,000 pounds of explosives and like a 3.9 magnitude earthquake, fairly close to the Ford. And the point of this was, I guess, they say to stretch test to see what would happen if, let's say, a Chinese missile detonated close to the ship. Now, I'm not sure if this really does anything, let's say, if a Chinese anti ship missile actually hit the ship or hit the deck of the ship in particular, but I guess they're simulating it exploding close. In response to this, the U.S. spread that it was a sign that the Chinese and Russian, particularly anti-ship missiles, would not be effective against our new aircraft carriers. I'm not so sure it shows that, but this testing of itself disturbs me because you're setting off this massive explosion in the ocean. I mean, everybody's so concerned about ocean currents and ocean temperatures and all that. Unnecessarily setting off this major explosion in the ocean seems to be really damaging. Who knows what kind of wildlife was, I'm sure, negatively impacted by this. I mean, according to the U.S., they said there was some minor damage done to the ship, and they say in the report that there were no major casualties, which seems to suggest that there were some minor casualties. This could just mean that like 4 soldiers fell out of their bunk and bruised their arms or something like that, but it could also mean that several soldiers got concussions or something along that line too. Not exactly sure how much damage it did, but I'm sure it did an awful lot of damage to like marine life in the ecosystem, especially since they've carried out 3 of these tests. They claim that, again, the tests were a success and that the damage will be repaired during scheduled maintenance last year. The last time these kind of tests were carried out was in 2016 on the littoral combat ships. I think that's about all I have from this particular story. But again, it's just, Biden's out there making these big announcements, how he's, doing all this climate change stuff. And he's so concerned we had to get rid of our, gas vehicles, and half the vehicles had to be electric by then the next decade or something like that. But at the same time, there's no concern in scaling back the U.S. military operations or doing crazy things like setting off massive bombs in the ocean. All right. Now, on to the tariffs, where U.S. retailers say that tariffs on Chinese goods are hurting U.S. business. This is by Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com, saying a group of several retail associations is arguing that tariffs on Chinese goods are hurting businesses. 7 groups, including the National Retail Federation, filed a brief with the U.S. Court of International Trade on Monday in support of U.S. businesses negatively affected by Chinese tariffs. The brief supports a lawsuit filed by 600 plaintiffs in September 22 against the tariffs that have been implemented since 2018. I guess, maybe some people thought that Biden was going to reverse the tariffs because he said he was going to reverse everything that Trump did. But like we've seen with a lot of Biden's foreign policy, he's kept all these tariffs in place throughout his administration, and there's really no sign that they're going away anytime soon. So hopefully maybe this is a legal option to getting these unfair tariffs lifted. And also, tariffs are taxes, so if you could sue to get tariffs or taxes lifted, maybe we should look at doing this more often. The U.S. is carrying out massive war games in the Pacific, or I guess actually Singapore is the location. The CSCAT games involved 21 countries, 10 ships, 400 crew. The drills are going to be mostly virtual kicking off on Thursday. But again, these are again massive drills, and they come on the heels of two other massive war games: the large-scale global exercise 21, which was worldwide, and then the large-scale exercise, which was I think more in the Indo-Pacific region. But we're continuing to see the U.S. wage these major war games in the region to build ties with militaries, with the goal of confronting China. So this is more and more of the aggressive actions that the U.S. continues to take against China in the South China, East China Sea, Indo-Pacific region. While the U.S. is holding these military games, Taiwan, is preparing to hold its own live fire war games. These are some of the largest war games that Taiwan has carried out. They're using runways further south than they've typically used in the past. My guess is that this is going to provoke some kind of response from China. I believe these games are set to kick off on September 13th, and once they conclude, the U.S. is going to kick off a larger set of war games in the region as well. And so along with COI, large-scale global, large-scale exercises, we have massive amount of war games going on, all with the main intent of targeting and threatening China, building relationships against China. Another way the U.S. is building relationships against China is we're preparing to deepen ties between our two coast guards. The U.S. and Taiwan held talks between their coast guard and agreed to have regular discussions between the two. Some trainings are going to take place, and while this maybe seems somewhat benign, I mean, most of what the U.S. Coast Guard, most people are aware of what the Coast Guard does, is, rescuing people whose fishing ships, get swept way too out to sea or something like that. Those type of missions are patrolling the U.S. coastline for smugglers, drug traffickers, in the potential that there was some kind of attack happening against the U.S. naval. I guess, the Coast Guard would take part in that. People know that, but they really maybe don't realize that the Coast Guard operates around the world, including in the South China Sea, including in the Persian Gulf. And so, again, this maybe seems like, oh, this is just helping Taiwan's Coast Guard get better at rescuing people whose fishing boats get blown too far into the Pacific Ocean. That maybe seems like a good idea. There's a reason, and there's maybe some more nefarious activity behind this, especially as the U.S. is looking to deepen all of its ties with Taiwan. And, we have more and more hots in the U.S. just looking to outright say we're going to defend Taiwan's independence from China, abandoning the decades-old one China policy that the U.S. has had, while recognizing that Taiwan and China are all part of the same country.